Michelle really tells a fantastic story. I love it. And I think unlike, from GKB, we are, I think we're still in the infantry where we're just, collecting the data. And I think the very next step though is what if the evidence are strong from literature, what do we do on those evidence? One next step, obviously, we wanted to talk to FDA and see whether those evidence is strong enough can put on the label. So that's where all this session was about. And from maternal pediatric MPRINT Knowledge Portal standpoint of view, we're starting to explore that kind of a direction as well. So I want to, before we go there, I just want to start with one story we have is want to highlight Saurabh Rahuka, who was an assistant professor in OSU. Now he's in Johnson Johnson. But before he left a few weeks ago, then he did a really good study, pediatric drug safety study using MPRINT portal and real-world evidence, looking at benzonatate drug toxicity. So if you look at the MPRINT Knowledge Portal, then and then we also looking at market scan data, which is commercial claims database. It has a lot of patients, technically 229,000 patients in market scan database. I can see those kids taking the medication. But this drug is not a new drug being on the market for 70 years. There's only 9 epidemiology PK paper talking about this drug, okay? So it's not very well studied. And when you're looking at those, how this has been done, it's not very well done either, okay? So we actually went into database trying to figure it out. But the benzonatate, why does it matter? It's, first of all, it's very common indication of a common medication, okay? And the use has increased dramatically since 2010, especially as a substituted opioids and antitussive. 70% of all pediatric and antitussive prescription are benzonatate. And perception of safety in this case, honestly, when you talk to the physician, they say, okay, not too bad. There's not much label safety warning over there. There's no black box, no contraindication except hypersensitivity. So that's all we can tell from drug label. And extremely resistant to the deprescribing means that prescription is against evidence-based guideline. American College of Emergency Physicians recommended for not prescribing in pediatric population. They tell physicians, but honestly, when you look at it, clinical practice, you see a lot of prescription, right? So that's where the story started. Then this is using Cosmos data where you can look at prescription pattern of benzonatate from 2010 to 2025, and benzonatate CYP has coding, and this is a opioid epidemic. Then there's also COVID epidemic. You can see the prescription patterns significantly higher than all the other medications. This is the Cosmo data, which is integrated EPIC data together. If you go to market scan data, right, very similar pattern as well. And during COVID, the prescription volume is much higher than all the other medication as well. So it's technically, it's an issue, right? We actually did some analysis using FAERS data and see whether benzonatate associated with any ADEs. Then we find, big warning sign, arrhythmia and a seizure, very strong reporting ratio. Okay, but obviously, FAERS data is biased data. You cannot use it for it's pharmacovigilance. You cannot use it for really clinical inference. Then we look at the market scan data. Well, you see, if you compare benzonatate versus standard care, which is no treatment, you got a 1.6 odds ratio of increased seizure risk from benzonatate. We controlled age, gender, geographical region, care setting, provider type, DX, diagnosis encounter, and some chronic conditions. So it's still pretty strong evidence. Okay, We have not looked at the cosmos yet, but we're looking into that. So this is strong evidence to me, at least. And we published the data 2025 last year as a case study. We're using MPRINT knowledge base, using real-world data to identify a safety signals for benzonatate, right? So the question is, so what, right? And then I don't know how to do it. I think we want to put a label, but can you do it? How do you do it? So we went over to my dear friend, Sean Hennessy. I think a lot of people knows him very well. He's one of the pioneers in the pharmacovigilance, pharmacoepidemiology. So I said, Sean, can you help us? Sean been working with us like forever. So he said, Lang, I have a slide deck. You can take it. I said, I'll take the slide deck. So I'll give the credit to Sean. So Sean's been doing this for quite a while, and he said there's ways you can do it through the public advocacy. Means that called a citizen petition to FDA. So it means that everybody can do it, right? So it really says permit any people to request FDA commissioner to issue, amend, or revoke regulation or order to take or refrain from taking any other form of administration action over which the commissioner has statutory authority based on the First Amendment right of a citizen to petition governance for redress grievance. So that's where used primarily by pharmaceutical companies or deter competition. So that's where they do it for against each other, put it this way. So that's where you can do. People like us, we can do it. Okay. The examples of regulatory action based on citizen petition to FDA, like OTC, cough, and cold medication relabeled to exclude use in infant and children below 2 years old. Something like there's several examples Sean shared with me. I don't want to go to detail, but technically the thing to say though is technically is doable. Okay, technically is doable. And this paper actually tell us how do you do it, and they actually showed you. They did a literature review of all this petition conducted between 2001 and 2013. So there are 1,915 petitions. 18% of them filed by individual non-profit organization, then the rest are filed by drug or device manufacturers. Okay, so that's the distribution of how people did it. Then among those petitions submitted by individual organizations, there are 44% of them by individual and 3% by governance, and 53% by non-profitable organizations like our university. Okay, and this is the really informative data. I don't know if it's encouraging or not encouraging, but this is a fact. So among those petitions, 46% are denied. All right. And 37 of them are pending, means still ongoing. Then 4% of them withdrew, and 1% asked for clarification. The magic number over there is granted entirely, 1%. Granted in part, but no non-suspensive outcome, 6%. And granted in part, suspensive outcome, it's about 4%. Okay, so technically the chance of succeeding is about 5 to 6%, but not counting the pending. Okay, probably some pending still have a chance to get a succeed, but nevertheless, I think it's probably below 10%, maybe above 5%. Okay, so that's how it is. To me, that chance is okay. Speaking of writing grants, right? We're getting it's better than that. And among those reasons for denied petition, I think most of the time the scientific grounds is not solid, and there's legal ground. The legal kind of a debating, and the other one is scientific plus legal ground, and the other things is we don't. It's hard to tell, but nevertheless, saying that if we get our data really solid scientifically, we should avoid those. We should be competitive in that case. So I think this is a so as a Xiang, what is experienced very similar to Michelle's talk, where successful petition may have very large effect on the regulatory landscape, drug use, and presumably clinical care and public health. So this is where we're trying to achieve, right? And a successful petition are oftenly led by healthcare professionals, academic, public health officials, means that we need to have a team together to do it instead of a single discipline. So we need to work together on that. The other thing that he said is successful petition needs to make compelling case that proposed action is justified and will improve public health. Okay, so there's a lot of data needs to be collected in a way to make the case, and most importantly, the patients need it. So that's how Xiang shared with us, very similar to Michelle's experience. So I will stop here. My story is not very long. To me, it's more like an actionable item. So I need to do something. So for us, it's like we have a case, but Benzonatate, I feel we are have pretty solid evidence. We can do a little bit more. Okay, and the question is that how do we do it and where to start? So I end my talk here. Then maybe we can start some panel discussion.
All right. Thank you, Lan.